You opened that blank document again last night, or maybe it was the Notes app. Maybe it was a fresh page in a notebook you bought specifically for this, and you sat there and you felt it, that wave of clarity where the whole thing suddenly made sense. The business, the project, the move, whatever it is you've been circling for months now, maybe years, and for about 20 minutes, you were on fire. You typed a few things, saved a few links, maybe even whispered to yourself, okay, this time I'm actually doing it. And then you closed the tab, went to bed, woke up the next morning and did absolutely nothing about it. Not because you forgot, you didn't forget, not because you lost motivation. You could feel it sitting right there in your chest. You just didn't move. And if someone asked you why, you wouldn't have an answer. Because you genuinely don't know. The wanting is real. The not doing is also real. And they exist in the same person at the same time, and that contradiction is so confusing that most people just stop looking at it. So let's look at it, because what's actually happening here is not a motivation problem. It's not discipline. It's not laziness. And honestly, it's not even fear in the way most people talk about fear. What's happening is something quieter and more protective than that. For a lot of people, the dream isn't something they're building toward. The dream is something they're living inside of, and there's a difference between those two things that changes everything. When you imagine something vividly enough, when you picture the outcome, the life, the version of yourself that exists on the other side of this thing, your brain gives you a small emotional reward just for imagining it. You feel like someone with direction, you feel like someone who's going somewhere, and that feeling is real, it just isn't earned. You're getting the emotional payoff of ambition without ever entering the space where ambition actually gets tested. And that's not a character flaw. That's one of the most sophisticated forms of self-protection most people never recognize in themselves. Now think about what happens the moment you actually start. You sit down, you try to build the thing, and immediately, it's wrong. The writing sounds flat, the design looks amateur. The idea that felt so sharp in your head comes out dull and obvious on the screen, and suddenly you're not the person with the brilliant vision anymore. You're the person producing something embarrassingly below their own standard. And for people whose identity is built around being capable, around being the one who gets it, that moment is not a small inconvenience. That moment is a threat. Because here's the part most people don't want to say out loud. Some people are more attached to the idea of their potential than they are to actually using it. Potential is perfect. Potential has no reviews. Nobody has ever left a 1-star rating on something you almost did. And the moment you act, you trade this clean, untouchable version of yourself for a real, flawed, possibly mediocre result. That doesn't feel like progress. That feels like a downgrade. And this is where it splits, because not everyone avoids action for the same reason. Some people don't start because their taste is years ahead of their ability. They know exactly what good looks like. And producing something that falls short of that standard feels almost physically painful, so they refine the plan one more time, wait until they feel ready. But ready keeps moving, because ready was never the real goal. The real goal was staying in the space where the gap between what they want and what they can do doesn't have to be visible yet. Other people don't start because the planning itself became the product, the folder of ideas, the bookmarked courses, the Notes app with 14 half-written outlines. You know that feeling of reorganizing your plan on a Sunday afternoon and feeling like you accomplished something? That's not preparation. That's a ritual that mimics progress closely enough to keep the guilt quiet for another week. And at some point, you're not preparing to do the thing. You're maintaining a relationship with the idea of doing the thing. Those are two completely different activities, and they feel almost identical from the inside. And then there's a version that's harder to admit. Some people keep the dream alive specifically because they've quietly decided they'll never act on it. Not consciously, but somewhere underneath, they know. And they hold on to it anyway, because as long as the dream exists, they're not stuck. As long as there's a someday, this isn't really their life. The dream becomes a door they never open, but always need to believe is there. And letting go of it wouldn't just mean giving up a goal, it would mean sitting in the quiet of their actual life without anything softening the weight of it. But here's the thing nobody wants to sit with: Look at how you actually spend your time, not how you think about your time, how you actually spend it. The hours that go into researching, planning, saving, reorganizing, watching other people do the thing you want to do, talking about the thing, thinking about the thing. If you added all of that up, over months, over years, it's not a small number. That's not leftover time. That's a significant portion of your life. And it didn't go toward building the dream. It went toward maintaining the feeling of having one, which means, and this is the part that hits, the dream didn't fail because you never started. The dream was never supposed to start. Its job was to make your actual life bearable, and it has been doing that job perfectly. You just never agreed to that arrangement out loud. You've probably felt this without naming it. You told someone about your idea over dinner, and their reaction felt so good that by the time you got home, the urgency was just gone. Peter Gallwitzer actually studied this. When people share their identity-related goals and others take notice, they become less likely to follow through. Because the identity already got confirmed, the hunger got fed before the work even started. You didn't need to build the thing, you just needed someone to see you as the kind of person who would. And here's where you probably recognize the loop. Dream, plan, feel that spark, get close to the edge, pull back, feel guilty, open Instagram, watch a video titled How to Stop Procrastinating, feel inspired by the video, save the video, add it to the playlist with the other 22 videos about productivity you've saved and never watched again. Tell yourself Monday is the day. Monday comes and you're tired. Tuesday you forgot. By Wednesday, the guilt has faded enough that it doesn't bother you. By Friday, a new idea shows up and the whole thing starts over, and every loop feels like a beginning, but it's a rerun, and somewhere around the fourth or fifth loop, you stop believing yourself. You just don't say that part out loud either. Here's what makes this psychologically complicated, though. For some people, the dream is genuinely keeping them intact. Their daily life is routine, obligation, other people's needs, autopilot. And the dream is the one space in their mind where they still feel like themselves, where something still belongs only to them. And you can't just rip that away, because you'd be asking them to sit in their actual life without the one thing that makes it feel temporary. But here's what nobody tells you about that room. It doesn't stay the same. The dream you never act on doesn't sit there patiently, keeping warm. Slowly, so slowly you barely notice, it changes temperature. The idea that used to make you feel electric starts making you feel heavy. The notebook that used to feel like possibility starts to feel like evidence, not of what you could do, of what you didn't. And one day you realize you're not excited about the idea anymore. You're grieving it. And you can't remember when that shift happened, but you know you missed it. That's not something you need to fix tonight, but it might be worth noticing before the room starts to feel different.